Thank you for joining Wars of the Roses as we continue with Part 11, the second degree or fellowcraft, from the Freemason's Manual, or Illustrations of Masonry by Jeremiah Howe. Fellowcraft. Chapter 11, the second degree or fellowcraft. Thus he showed me, and behold, the Lord stood upon a wall made by a plumb line, with a plumb line in his hand. And the Lord said unto me, Amos, what seest thou? And I said, A plumb line. Then said the Lord, Behold, I will set a plumb line in the midst of my people Israel. I will not pass by them any more. Amos 7:7-8. Masonry is a progressive science and is divided into different classes or degrees for the more regular advancement in the knowledge of its mysteries. According to the progress we make, we limit or extend our inquiries, and in proportion to our talents, we attain to a lesser or greater degree of perfection. Masonry includes almost every branch of polite learning under the veil of its mysteries, which comprehend a regular system of virtue and science. Many of its illustrations may appear unimportant to the confined genius, but the man of more enlarged faculties will consider them in the highest degree useful and interesting. To please the accomplished scholar and ingenious artist, the institution is well suited, and in the investigation of its latent doctrines, the philosopher and mathematician may experience equal satisfaction and delight. To exhaust the various subjects of which Masonry treats would transcend the powers of the brightest genius. Still, however, nearer approaches to perfection may be made, and the man of wisdom will not check the progress of his abilities, though the task he attempts may at first seem insurmountable. Perseverance and application will remove each difficulty as it occurs. Every step he advances, new pleasures will open to his view, and instruction of the noblest kind attend his researches. In the diligent pursuit of knowledge, great discoveries are made, and the intellectual faculties are wisely employed in promoting the glory of God and the good of mankind. Such is the tendency of all the illustrations in Masonry. Reverence for the deity and gratitude for the blessings of heaven are inculcated in every degree. This is the plan of our system and the result of our inquiries. The entered apprentice duly qualified by time is thus in open lodge required to undergo an examination as to his preparation for being initiated, when and where he underwent the ceremony, his knowledge of what he had been entrusted with proofs, and also what Freemasonry was. The candidate having satisfactorily replied to these inquiries or any other method of proof deemed necessary, he is then, under a solemn promise of secrecy, entrusted with a password to enable him to present himself at the portal of a fellowcraft's lodge, the first degree being intended to enforce the duties of morality and imprint on the memory the noblest principles which can adorn the human mind. The second degree extends the plan and comprehends a more diffusive system of knowledge. Practice and theory are united to qualify the industrious Mason to share the pleasures which an advancement in the art necessarily affords. Listening with attention to the opinions of experienced men on important subjects, the mind of the craftsman is gradually familiarized to useful instruction, and he is soon enabled to investigate truths of the utmost concern in the general transactions of life. From this system proceeds a rational amusement. While the mental powers are fully employed, the judgment is properly exercised. A spirit of emulation prevails, and every brother vies who shall most excel in promoting the design of the institution. During the candidate's absence, a lodge of fellow crafts is opened, and as this degree is particularly devoted to science, the blessing of the Creator is thus invoked. We supplicate the grand geometrician of the universe that the rays of heaven may shed their benign influence over us, to enlighten us in the paths of nature and of science, so mote it be. On the entered apprentice being admitted into the lodge, he is directed by the master to kneel while the blessing of heaven is thus invoked. We supplicate, O Lord, a continuance of thy divine aid in behalf of the brother who now kneels before thee, and grant that the work to be done in thy name be continued to thy glory. So mote it be. The brother who has been admitted into the second degree is informed by the master that as a craftsman, he is expected to make the liberal arts and sciences his future study, that he may be the better enabled to discharge his duties as a Mason and estimate the wondrous works of the Almighty Creator. The master then admonishes him on the progression by which he had been advanced, and that it is equally his duty to bear in mind and practice the moral virtues inculcated in the first degree, as well as those demonstrative sciences which are the objects of the second degree. The working tools of a craftsman are then presented to him. Their operative and speculative uses are thus described. The square is an important implement to operative masons, for by it they are enabled to correct the errors of the eye and to adjust with precision the edges, sides and angles of their work, and thus assist in bringing rude matter into due form. The nicest joints are by its means adjusted, and stones are fitted with accuracy to fill their destined positions. The level is an instrument by which mason's work is adjusted in the same line or plane, or to lay the work in true horizontal level. The plumb is an instrument made use of for the purpose of erecting perpendicular lines, or to try and adjust all uprights while fixing on their proper basis. To the speculative mason, the square teaches morality, the level equality, and the plumb justness and uprightness of life and actions, and thus by square conduct, level steps and upright intentions, we hope to ascend to those immortal mansions whence all goodness emanates. The lodge in this degree is closed by the master, exhorting the brethren to remember wherever they are, whatever they do, the all-seeing eye of the grand geometrician is ever over all, and that while they continue to act as fellow craft masons, they must discharge their duties with fervency and zeal. The second degree is, it is to be observed, particularly devoted to science. The lessons or instructions in the first degree are entirely given to piety, morality, and brotherly love. In the second degree, the craftsman's attention is directed to the study of science, the beauties of which, and the wonders of nature and art, are by degrees unfolded to his view in the lectures. Many masons are of opinion this degree completed ancient Jewish masonry, and that the third, or master mason's degree, was an ordination of the new covenant. The Book of Constitutions declares no lodge shall confer more than one degree on any brother on the same day, nor shall a higher degree be conferred on any brother at a less interval than 4 weeks from his receiving a previous degree, nor until he has passed an examination in open lodge in that degree. The lecture of this degree is divided into 5 sections, and the whole are devoted to human science, and to trace the goodness and majesty of the Creator by minutely analyzing his works. The first section of the second degree elucidates the mode of introduction into this class, and instructs the diligent craftsman how to proceed in the proper arrangement of the ceremonies which are used on that occasion. It enables him to judge of the importance of those rites, and convinces him of the necessity of adhering to all the established usages of the order. Here he is entrusted with particular tests to prove his title to the privileges of this degree, and satisfactory reasons are given for their origin. The duties which cement in the firmest union well-informed brethren are illustrated, and an opportunity is given to make such advances in the art as will always distinguish the talents of able craftsmen. Besides the ceremony of passing to the second degree, this section contains many important particulars, with which no officer of the lodge should be unacquainted. Formerly, the following charge was delivered to the craftsman on passing this degree. Brother, being advanced to the second degree of the order, we congratulate you on your preferment. The internal and not the external qualifications of a man are what Masonry regards. As you increase in knowledge, you will consequently improve in social intercourse. It is unnecessary to recapitulate the duties which, as a Mason, you are now bound to discharge, or enlarge on the necessity of a strict adherence to them, as your own experience must have established their value. It may be sufficient to observe that your past behavior and regular deportment have merited the honor which we have conferred, and in your new character it is expected that you will not only conform to the principles of the order, but steadily persevere in the practice of every virtue. The study of the liberal arts, that valuable branch of education which tends so effectually to polish and adorn the mind, is earnestly recommended to your consideration, especially the science of geometry, which is established as the basis of our art. Geometry, or Masonry, originally synonymous terms, is of a divine and moral nature, and enriched with the most useful knowledge. Whilst it proves the wonderful properties of nature, it demonstrates the more important truths of morality. As the solemnity of our ceremonies requires a serious deportment, you are to be particularly attentive to your behavior in our regular assemblies. You are to preserve our ancient usages and customs sacred and inviolable, and induce others by your example to hold them in due veneration. The laws and regulations of the order you are strenuously to support and maintain. You are not to palliate or aggravate the offenses of your brethren, but in the decision of every trespass against our rules, judge with candor, admonish with friendship, and reprehend with mercy. As a craftsman in our private assemblies, you may offer your sentiments and opinions on such subjects as are regularly introduced in the lecture under the superintendence of an experienced master who will guard the landmarks against encroachment. By this privilege, you may improve your intellectual powers, qualify yourself to become a useful member of society, and like a skillful brother, strive to excel in what is good and great. All regular signs and summonses given and received, you are duly to honor and punctually obey, inasmuch as they consist with our professed principles. You are to encourage industry and reward merit, supply the wants and relieve the necessities of brethren and fellows to the utmost of your power and ability, and on no account to wrong them or see them wronged, but timely to apprise them of approaching danger and view their interest as inseparable from your own. Such is the nature of your engagements as a craftsman, and these duties you are now bound by the most sacred ties to observe. The second section of this degree presents an ample field for the man of genius to perambulate. It cursorily specifies the particular classes of the order and explains the requisite qualifications for preferment in each. In the explanation of our usages, many remarks are introduced, which are equally useful to the experienced artist and the sage moralist. The various operations of the mind are demonstrated as far as they will admit of elucidation, and a fund of extensive science is explored throughout. Here we find employment for leisure hours, trace science from its original source, and by drawing the attention to the sum of perfection, contemplate with admiration the wonderful works of the Creator. Geometry is displayed with all its powers and properties, and in the disquisition of this science the mind is filled with rapture and delight. Geometry is the science which investigates the relations existing between parts of space, whether linear, superficial, or solid. The history of the rise of this science by the Egyptians, having their landmarks yearly destroyed by the inundations of the Nile, being obliged to invent the art of land surveying in order to preserve the memory of the bounds of property, is transmitted to us by tradition, but without any proof that they were more of geometers than astronomers. We have no historic evidence of the knowledge and practice of this science by any people earlier than the Greeks. Thales, born at Miletus in Ionia, of Phoenician parents, traveled in pursuit of knowledge, and when in Egypt taught the people how to measure the pyramids. He founded the earliest school for geometry and astronomy. Thales, who is enumerated among the 7 wise men, we may rank as the first natural philosopher. He is recorded to have made many physical discoveries. He determined the magnitude of the sun to be 720 times that of the moon, and fixed the length of the year at 365 days. He predicted the great eclipse which took place when the armies of Cyrus and Alyattes were engaged in battle. Diogenes records one of his sayings: "The most ancient of things existing is God, for he is uncreated. The most beautiful thing is the universe, for it is God's creation." He died about BC 548. Pythagoras, some few years after, gave geometry the form of a science. He was followed by other eminent men, among whom may be more particularly named Plato and Euclid. The mathematical works of the latter are in use to this day. Geometry is the first and noblest of sciences, and the basis on which the structure of Freemasonry is erected. The contemplation of this science in a moral and comprehensive view fills the mind with rapture. To the true geometrician, the regions of matter with which he is surrounded afford ample scope for his admiration, while they open a sublime field for his inquiry and disquisition. Every blade of grass which covers the field, every flower that blows, and every insect which wings its way in the bounds of expanded space proves the existence of a first cause and yields pleasure to the intelligent mind. The symmetry, beauty and order displayed in the various parts of animate and inanimate creation are pleasing and delightful themes and naturally lead to the source whence the whole is derived. When we bring within the focus of the eye the variegated carpet of the terrestrial creation and survey the progress of the vegetative system, our admiration is justly excited. Every plant that grows, every flower that displays its beauties or breathes its sweets, affords instruction and delight. When we extend our views to the animal creation and contemplate the varied clothing of every species, we are equally struck with astonishment. And when we trace the lines of geometry drawn by the divine pencil in the beautiful plumage of the feathered tribe, how exalted is our conception of the heavenly work, the admirable structure of plants and animals, and the infinite number of fibers and vessels which run through the whole, with the apt disposition of one part to another, is a perpetual subject of study to the true geometrician, who, while he adverts to the changes which all undergo in their progress to maturity, is lost in rapture and veneration of the great cause that produced the whole and which continues to govern the system. When he descends into the bowels of the earth and explores the kingdom of ores, minerals and fossils, he finds the same instances of divine wisdom and goodness displayed in their formation and structure. Every gem and every pebble proclaims the handiwork of an almighty creator. When he surveys the watery element and directs his attention to the wonders of the deep, with all the inhabitants of the mighty ocean, he perceives emblems of the same supreme intelligence. The scales of the largest whale and the penciled shell of the most diminutive fish equally yield a theme for his contemplation, on which he fondly dwells, while the symmetry of their formation and the delicacy of the tints evince to his discerning eye the wisdom of the divine artist. When he exalts his view to the more noble and elevated parts of nature and surveys the celestial orbs, how much greater is his astonishment. If, on the principles of geometry and true philosophy, he contemplates the sun, the moon, the stars, and the whole concave of heaven, his pride is humbled, and he is lost in awful admiration. The immense magnitude of those bodies, the regularity and rapidity of their motions, and the vast extent of space through which they move are equally inconceivable, and, as far as they exceed human comprehension, baffle his most daring ambition, till, lost in the immensity of the theme, he sinks into his primitive insignificance. By geometry, then, we curiously trace nature through her various windings to her most concealed recesses. By it we discover the power, the wisdom, and the goodness of the great artificer of the universe, and view with delight the proportions which connect this vast machine. By it we discover how the planets move in their different orbits and demonstrate their various revolutions. By it we account for the return of seasons and the variety of scenes which each season displays to the discerning eye. Numberless worlds are around us, all framed by the same divine artist, which roll through the vast expanse and are all conducted by the same unerring law. A survey of nature and the observation of her beautiful proportions first determined man to imitate the divine plan and study symmetry and order. This gave rise to societies and birth to every useful art. The architect began to design, and the plans which he laid down, improved by experience and time, produced works which have been the admiration of every age. The second section concludes with this eloquent illustration of the 6 days' work of creation. When we consider that the formation of this world was the work of that divine being who created the beautiful system of the universe and caused all nature to be under his supreme command, how ought we to magnify and adore his holy name for his goodness to the children of men? Before the Almighty was pleased to command this vast whole into existence, the elements and materials of the creation lay blended together without form or distinction. Darkness was on the face of the great deep, and the Spirit of God moved on the surface of the waters. The Almighty, as an example to man that things of moment should be done with due deliberation, was pleased to be 6 days in commanding it from chaos to perfection. The first instance of his supreme power was made manifest by commanding light. Being pleased with this new operation, he distinguished it by a name, calling the light day, and the darkness he called night. In order to keep this new frame matter within just limits, the second period was employed in laying the foundation of the heavens, which he called firmament. designed to keep those waters which were within the clouds and those beneath them asunder. On the third period, those waters were commanded into due limits, on the retreat of which dry land appeared, which he called earth, and the gathering together of the mighty congregated waters he called seas. The earth being as yet irregular, barren, and uncultivated, God spake the word, and it was immediately covered with a beautiful carpet of grass, designed as pasture for the brute creation. Trees, shrubs, and flowers of all sorts succeeded in full growth, maturity, and perfection. On the fourth period, those two grand luminaries, the sun and moon, were created, the sun to rule the day, and the moon to govern the night. And the sacred historian informs us they were ordained for signs, for seasons, for days and years. The Almighty was also pleased to bespangle the ethereal concave with a multitude of stars, that man, whom he intended to make, might contemplate thereon and justly admire his majesty and glory. On the fifth period, he caused the waters to bring forth a variety of fish for our use, and in order to imprint on man a reverential awe of his divine omnipotence, he created great whales, which together with other inhabitants of the great deep, multiplied exceedingly after their kind. On the same period, he caused the birds to fly in the air, that man might delight his eyes and ears, with some for their beautiful plumage, and others for their melodious notes. On the sixth period, he created the beasts of the field and the reptiles that crawl on the earth. And here we may plainly perceive the wisdom, power, and goodness of the grand geometrician of the universe made manifest throughout the whole of his proceedings. He produced what effects he pleased, without the aid of natural causes, such as giving light to the world before he had created the sun, and making the earth fruitful without the influence of the heavenly bodies. He did not create the beasts of the field until he had provided them with sufficient herbage for their support. Neither did he make man until he had provided him with a dwelling and everything requisite for life and pleasure. Then, to dignify the works of his hands still more, he made man, who came into the world with greater pomp than any creature that had preceded him. They came with only a single command. God spake the word, and it was done. But at the formation of man, we are told, there was a consultation in which God said, "Let us make man." He was immediately formed out of the dust of the earth. The breath of life was breathed into his nostrils, and man became a living soul. Now in this one creature was a combination of everything that was excellent throughout the whole creation, such as the quality and substance of an animate being, the life of plants, the sense of beasts, but above all the understanding of angels, formed after the immediate image of God, thereby intimating to him that integrity and uprightness should ever influence him to adore his divine Creator, who had so liberally bestowed on him the faculty of speech and further endued him with that noble instinct called reason. The Almighty, as his last and best gift to man, created woman. Under his forming hand a creature grew, man-like but different in sex, all kind and soft, all tender and divine, to mend our faults and mold us into virtue. On she came, led by her heavenly Maker, though unseen yet guided by his voice, adorned with all that heaven could bestow to make her amiable. Grace was in all her steps, heaven in her eye, and in every gesture dignity and love. The Almighty, having finished his 6 days' work, on the seventh he rested, blessed, hallowed, and sanctified it. He has therefore taught man to work 6 days industriously, but strictly commanded him to rest on the seventh, the better to contemplate on the beautiful works of the creation, to adore him as their Creator, to go into his sanctuaries and offer praises for life and every blessing he so amply enjoys at his all-bountiful hands. The third section has reference to the building of King Solomon's temple, particularly detailing the construction of the 2 remarkable pillars that stood at the entrance. This section is short but of great importance to the craftsman. The information it contains is founded on reason and sacred record. In fact, it is almost entirely derived from the historical books of the Old Testament. Hanway, in his Journal of Travels, published in 1753, mentions as being in the Cabinet of Curiosities at Dresden a model of the Temple of Solomon cut in cedar. According to the description in the Book of Kings, the Sanctum Sanctorum, the Ark, etc. are all represented. The fourth section, after illustrating the formation of a fellow crafts lodge, describes the 5 noble orders of architecture, and the 7 liberal arts and sciences. The 5 orders in architecture are the Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and Composite. And in the history of mankind, there are few things more remarkable than that Masonry and civilization have ever gone hand in hand together. And in earlier times, it may be affirmed, the orders in architecture marked their growth and progress. By order, in architecture, is meant a system of the members, proportions, and ornaments of columns and pilasters, or it is a regular arrangement of the projecting parts of a building, which, united with those of a column, form a beautiful, perfect, and complete whole. Order in architecture may be traced from the first formation of society, when the rigor of seasons obliged men to contrive shelter from the inclemency of the weather. We learn that they first planted trees on end and then laid others across to support a covering. The bands which connected those trees at top and bottom are said to have suggested the idea of the base and capital of pillars, and from this simple hint originally proceeded the more improved art of architecture. The 5 orders are thus classed: the Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and Composite. The Tuscan is the most simple and solid of the 5 orders. It was invented in Tuscany, whence it derives its name. Its column is 7 diameters high, and its capital, base, and entablature have but few moldings. The simplicity of the construction of this column renders it eligible where solidity is the chief object, and where ornament would be superfluous. The Doric order, which is plain and natural, is the most ancient and was invented by the Greeks. Its column is 8 diameters high, and it has seldom any ornaments on base or capital except moldings, though the frieze is distinguished by triglyphs and metopes, and the triglyphs compose the ornaments of the frieze. The solid composition of this order gives it a preference in structures where strength and a noble but rough simplicity are chiefly required. The Ionic bears a kind of mean proportion between the more solid and delicate orders. Its column is 9 diameters high, its capital is adorned with volutes, and its cornice has denticles. There is both delicacy and ingenuity displayed in this pillar, the invention of which is attributed to the Ionians, as the famous Temple of Diana at Ephesus was of this order. It is said to have been formed after the model of an agreeable young woman of an elegant shape, with her hair dressed as a contrast to the Doric order, which was formed after that of a strong, robust man. The Corinthian, the richest of the 5 orders, is deemed a masterpiece of art and was invented at Corinth by Callimachus. Its column is 10 diameters high, and its capital is adorned with 2 rows of leaves and 8 volutes, which sustain the abacus. The frieze is ornamented with curious devices, and the cornice with denticles and modillions. This order is used in stately and superb structures. The Composite is compounded of the other orders and was contrived by the Romans. Its capital has the 2 rows of leaves of the Corinthian and the volutes of the Ionic. Its column has the quarter round as the Tuscan and Doric orders, is 10 diameters high, and its cornice has denticles or simple modillions. This pillar is generally found in buildings where strength, elegance, and beauty are united. These observations are intended to induce the industrious craftsman to pursue his researches into the rise and progress of architecture by consulting the works of the best writers on the subject. As the 7 liberal arts and sciences are illustrated in this section, it may not be improper to give a short explanation of them. Grammar teaches the proper arrangement of words, according to the idiom or dialect of any particular people, and that excellency of pronunciation which enables us to speak or write a language with accuracy, agreeably to reason and correct usage. Rhetoric teaches us to speak copiously and fluently on any subject, not merely with propriety, but with all the advantages of force and elegance, wisely contriving to captivate the hearers by strength of argument and beauty of expression, whether it be to entreat or exhort, to admonish or applaud. Logic teaches us to guide our reason discretionally in the general knowledge of things and direct our inquiries after truth. It consists of a regular train of argument, whence we infer, deduce, and conclude, according to certain premises laid down, admitted or granted, and in it are employed the faculty of conceiving, judging, reasoning, and disposing, which are naturally led on from one gradation to another till the point in question is finally determined. Arithmetic teaches the powers and properties of numbers, which is variously affected by letters, tables, figures, and instruments. By this art, reasons and demonstrations are given for finding out any certain number whose relation or affinity to others is already known. Geometry treats of the powers and properties of magnitudes in general, where length, breadth, and thickness are considered. By this science, the architect is enabled to construct his plans, the general to arrange his soldiers, the engineer to mark out ground for encampments, the geographer to give us the dimensions of the world, delineate the extent of seas, and specify the divisions of empires, kingdoms, and provinces. And by it also, the astronomer is enabled to make his observations and fix the duration of times and seasons, years and cycles. In short, geometry is the foundation of architecture and the root of the mathematics and the basis on which the superstructure of Freemasonry is erected. The spacious firmament on high, with all the blue ethereal sky and spangled heavens a shining frame their great original proclaim. The unwearied sun from day to day does his Creator's praise display and publishes to every land the work of an almighty hand. Soon as the evening shades prevail, the moon takes up the wondrous tale and nightly to the listening earth repeats the story of her birth. While all the stars that round her burn and all the planets in their turn confirm the tidings as they roll and spread the truth from pole to pole. What though in solemn silence all move round the dark terrestrial ball? What though nor voice nor minstrel sound among their radiant orbs be found? With saints and angels they rejoice and utter forth their glorious voice, forever singing as they shine, the hand that made us is divine. Music teaches the art of forming concords, so as to compose delightful harmony by a proportional arrangement of acute, grave, and mixed sounds. This art, by a series of experiments, is reduced to a science with respect to tones and the intervals of sound only. It inquires into the nature of concords and discords and enables us to find out the proportion between them by numbers. In praise of this science, Shakespeare says, "The man that hath no music in himself, nor is not moved with concord of sweet sounds, is fit for treasons, stratagems, and spoils. The motions of his spirit are as dull as night, and his affections dark as Erebus. Let no such man be trusted." Astronomy is that art by which we are taught to read the wonderful works of the Almighty Creator in those sacred pages, the celestial hemisphere. Assisted by astronomy, we observe the motions, measure the distances, comprehend the magnitudes, and calculate the periods and eclipses of the heavenly bodies. By it we learn the use of the globes, the system of the world, and the primary law of nature. While we are employed in the study of this science, we perceive unparalleled instances of wisdom and goodness, and through the whole of creation trace the glorious author by his works. The fifth section has reference to the institution at the time of building the Temple of Solomon, and may be said especially to refer to the payment of the workmen there employed, the government and division of classes among our ancient brethren, and the period that remarkable building was constructing, and its final completion and dedication. Thus ends the lecture in the second degree, which besides the historical information relative to the house of God erected by King Solomon, contains a complete theory of philosophy and physics, and a regular system of science demonstrated on the clearest principles and established on the firmest foundation. Songs appropriate to the fellow craft. Tune, Goddess of ease, genius of masonry, descend, and with thee bring thy spotless train. Constant our sacred rites attend, while we adore thy peaceful reign. Bring with thee virtue, brightest maid, bring love, bring truth, bring friendship here, while social mirth shall lend her aid to smooth the wrinkled brow of care. Come, charity, with goodness crowned, encircled in thy heavenly robe, diffuse thy blessings all around, to every corner of the globe. See where she comes with power to bless, with open hand and tender heart, which wounded feels at man's distress, and bleeds at every human smart. Envy may every ill devise, and falsehood be thy deadliest foe. Thou, friendship, still shall towering rise, and sink thine adversaries low. Thy well-built pile shall long endure, through rolling years preserve its prime. Upon a rock it stands secure, and braves the rude assaults of time. Ye happy few who here extend in perfect lines from east to west, with fervent zeal the lodge defend, and lock its secrets in each breast. Since ye are met upon the square, bid love and friendship jointly reign. Be peace and harmony your care, nor break the adamantine chain. Behold the planets how they move, yet keep due order as they run. Then imitate the stars above and shine resplendent as the sun. That future Masons, when they meet, may all our glorious deeds rehearse and say their fathers were so great that they adorned the universe. Tune, rule, Britannia. Hail, Masonry, thou craft divine, glory of earth from heaven revealed, which doth with jewels precious shine, from all but Masons' eyes concealed. Thy praise is due, who can rehearse in nervous prose or flowing verse. All craftsmen true distinguished are, our code all other laws excels, and what's in knowledge choice and rare within our breasts securely dwells. The silent breast, the faithful heart, preserve the secrets of the art. From searching heat and piercing cold, from beasts whose roar the forest rends, from the assaults of warriors bold, the Mason's art mankind defends. Be to this art due honor paid, from which mankind receives such aid. Ensigns of state that feed our pride, distinctions troublesome and vain, by Masons true are laid aside. Art's freeborn sons such toys disdain, ennobled by the name they bear, distinguished by the badge they wear. Sweet fellowship from envy free, friendly converse of brotherhood, the lodge's lasting cement be, which has for ages firmly stood. A lodge thus built for ages past has lasted and shall ever last. Then let us celebrate the praise of all who have enriched the art. Let gratitude our voices raise, and each true brother bear a part. Let cheerful strains their fame resound, and living Masons' healths go round. Tune, in infancy. Let Masonry from pole to pole her sacred laws expand, far as the mighty waters roll to wash remotest land. That virtue has not left mankind, her social maxims prove, for stamped upon the Mason's mind are unity and love. Ascending to her native sky, let Masonry increase. A glorious pillar raised on high, integrity its base. Peace adds to olive boughs entwined. An emblematic dove, as stamped upon the Mason's mind are unity and love. Let drunkards boast the power of wine and reel from side to side. Let lovers kneel at beauty's shrine, the sport of female pride. Be ours the more exalted part, to celebrate the Mason's art and spread its praises wide. To dens and thickets dark and rude, for shelter beasts repair. With sticks and straws the feathered brood suspend their nests in air, and man untaught, as wild as these, binds up sad huts with boughs of trees and feeds on wretched fare. But science dawning in his mind, the quarry he explores. Industry and the arts combined improved all nature's stores. Thus walls were built and houses reared. No storms nor tempests now are feared within his well-framed doors. When stately palaces arise, when columns grace the hall, when towers and spires salute the skies, we owe to Masons all. Nor buildings only do they give, but teach men how within to live, and yield to reason's call. All party quarrels they detest, for virtue and the arts lodged in each tray Freemasons' breast, unite and rule their hearts. By these, while Masons square their minds, the state no better subjects finds, none act more upright parts. When bucks and Albions are forgot, Freemasons will remain. Mushrooms each day spring up and rot, while oaks stretch o'er the plain. Let others quarrel, rant and roar, their noisy revels when no more still Masonry shall reign. Our leathern aprons we compare with garters red and blue. Princes and kings our brothers are, while they our rules pursue. Then drink success and health to all the craft around this earthly ball, may brethren still prove true. In all your dealings take good care, instructed by the friendly square, to be true, upright, just and fair, and thou a fellow craft shalt be. The level so must poise thy mind, that satisfaction thou shalt find when to another fortune's kind, and that's the drift of Masonry. The compass t'other two compounds, and says, though angered on just grounds, keep all your passions within bounds, and thou a fellow craft shalt be. Thus, symbols of our order are the compass, level, and the square, which teach us to be just and fair, and that's the drift of Masonry. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to share, like, subscribe, and comment. And if you can, please consider donating to Wars of the Roses. Links to PayPal and Patreon are in the description. Thank you so very much.